Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's take up the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. The Government of India has notified a new set of domicile rules for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. But before we look at these new rules, first let us understand what is domicile. See, domicile basically refers to a place where an individual has taken up permanent residence. So the permanent residents of a place are said to be domiciled in that region, and they are usually given a set of benefits that are generally not available to outsiders. When Jammu and Kashmir was a state, it was given a special status under Article 370, and the permanent residents of J&K were given special protection under Article 35A of the Indian Constitution. Under this provision, the state legislature of Jammu and Kashmir was empowered to define the permanent residents of the state. And accordingly, a set of domicile rights were given to the permanent residents by the J&K legislature and by the J&K government. These domicile rights provided special protection to the permanent residents of J&K in the matters of government jobs, property ownership, etc. Earlier, government jobs in J&K were reserved only for the permanent residents, and non-J&K residents were not eligible for these government jobs. On similar lines, a non-J&K resident was earlier prohibited from buying property in Jammu and Kashmir. Owning property was a special privilege that was given only to the permanent residents of the state. But with the revocation of Article 370 and Article 35A, J&K lost its special status, and thereby the domicile rights of the permanent residents had to be withdrawn and replaced with a new set of domicile rules. So accordingly, the Government of India has notified a new set of domicile rules for Jammu and Kashmir, and as per this new notification, the definition of domicile is defined on the basis of these three conditions. As per this new definition, a person who has resided in J&K for more than 15 years would be considered to be domiciled in the Union Territory of J&K. Then a person who has studied in an educational institution located in Jammu and Kashmir for 7 years, and if he has taken up his Class 10 or Class 12 examination in J&K, then he or she would also be considered to be domiciled in J&K. And even a migrant who is registered with the Relief and Rehabilitation Commissioner for Migrants would also be treated to be domiciled in J&K. Then finally, the children of central government officials, all India services, public sector units, autonomous bodies of the centre, public sector banks, central universities, etc. would also be considered as domiciles of J&K if the parents have served for a total period of 10 years in Jammu and Kashmir. These domiciles are being provided with reservation in government jobs, and henceforth all Group D posts and entry-level non-gazetted posts are being reserved for the domiciles. This is a major downgrade as compared to the earlier domicile rights, because earlier the permanent residents of J&K would enjoy reservation in Group A and Group B government jobs as well, and non-J&K residents were not eligible for these posts earlier. But under the new domicile rules, only low-level government jobs have been reserved for the domiciles, whereas recruitment for Group A and Group B posts would be conducted by the UPSC, and even non-J&K residents would be eligible to apply for these posts. Then the new notification of the Ministry of Home Affairs also makes changes to the controversial Public Safety Act. See, earlier, under the Public Safety Act, if permanent residents of J&K were charged, they had to be kept in jails within J&K, and they could not be lodged in jails outside of J&K. But the latest notification removes this clause, and it allows those who are domiciled in J&K to be lodged in jails outside of J&K if they are charged under the Public Safety Act. Then in another major change to the Public Safety Act, the criteria for appointing members to the Public Safety Act Advisory Board has been changed. See, the Public Safety Advisory Board plays a key role in deciding upon the release of those who have been detained under the provisions of the Public Safety Act. Earlier, appointments to the Public Safety Act Advisory Board was being made by a search committee that was headed by the Chief Justice of the J&K High Court. The new notification replaces the Chief Justice with the Chief Secretary of the Union Territory of J&K. Earlier, sitting High Court judges were being appointed as members to the advisory board by the search committee. But the new notification prohibits the appointment of sitting High Court judges to the board. But if such an appointment has to be made, then it mandates consultation with the Chief Justice of the J&K High Court. These changes appear to restrict the role of the judiciary in deciding upon appointments to the advisory board. It is providing a greater role for the executive to decide upon appointments to the advisory board, and this has raised a lot of concerns. Because the Public Safety Act is a controversial legislation which provides for detention of an individual for up to 2 years without a trial. So the reduced role of the judiciary and the increasing role of the executive has given rise to a concern that the fundamental rights and the basic rights of those who might be charged under the PSA would be affected because of the reduced independence of the advisory board and the search committee. Then finally, the new notification also takes away some of the pension benefits that were being enjoyed by former chief ministers of Jammu and Kashmir. This includes benefits such as car driver, accommodation, phones, electricity, medical facilities, and rent-free accommodation. Next, we have an article on page number 3 and an editorial on page number 6, which refers to the controversial religious congregation that took place at the Nizamuddin Markaz in Delhi. This congregation was organized by the Tablighi Jamaat, which is a neo-conservative fundamentalist organization, and it is usually accused of being involved in missionary activities and illegal conversion activities. This religious event, which was organized in the second week of March, has led to the formation of a massive COVID-19 cluster in India, and it has acted as a super spreader, leading to the rapid increase in the number of positive cases in India. This event witnessed the participation of thousands of people, not just from across India, but also from across the world, including a few COVID-19 hotspots, such as Southeast Asian countries and Middle Eastern countries. As the event ended, the participants headed back to their respective states, carrying and spreading the infection across India. But to be fair, the event was held in the second week of March, and during this period, the government of India had not even considered novel coronavirus as a health emergency. This was even before the World Health Organization had declared COVID-19 as a pandemic. But the event was cancelled by the organizers as soon as the lockdown was imposed. So technically, the organizers did not necessarily violate any of the lockdown restrictions. But the concern is that the organizers went ahead with the event despite being aware of the risk of large gatherings. Because by mid-March, coronavirus was spreading rapidly around the world, and hence large gatherings were being discouraged in order to avoid the formation of a cluster. But despite this, the organizers went ahead with the event, and they brought in foreigners from these hotspots, leading to the formation of a major cluster in India. The other concern is that, despite repeated warnings from the Delhi police, the organizers failed to inform and disperse the large crowd that had been trapped at the Markaz due to the imposition of travel and movement restrictions during the lockdown. Reports have also emerged that the organizers failed to cooperate with the police and the health authorities, and this brings up the role of religious activities in enabling the spread of COVID-19 around the world. We have discussed over the last couple of weeks how a Christian cult group in South Korea and in Singapore led to the rapid spread of COVID-19. Similarly, Shia pilgrims in the holy city of Qom in Iran ignored the warnings and refused to obey the authorities. Something similar has been done by the Tablighi Jamaat in India and as well as in Pakistan. And another religious congregation organized by Sunni groups in Malaysia led to the formation of a major cluster in Southeast Asia. A similar trend of ignoring scientific temper for the sake of religious views has been noticed in the United States as well. Far right-wing Christian groups have opposed the imposition of a lockdown in the United States. Then back in India, the Hindu Mahasabha and other radical Hindutva outfits have propagated pseudoscience as a cure for COVID-19. These groups have organized events across India to promote the consumption of cow urine and cow dung as a cure for COVID-19. Similarly, a few Hindu temples in India, they refused to close down before the lockdown was imposed. Similarly, in Israel, ultra-conservative Jews have disobeyed the authorities and they have continued with their religious activities. This trend that has been seen around the world in almost all religions shows how blind faith in religion and radical conservative views can compromise scientific temper. Because see, when religion and spirituality is treated as a deeply personal matter and left to the discretion of the individual, then there can be some harmony between religion and science. But when blind faith in religion is encouraged, and when conservative radical views are encouraged, it leads to a herd mentality which can contradict the ideal of scientific temper. Because see, at the end of the day, no prayer or no God can save the world from a pandemic. So it is the responsibility of all religious groups and their community leaders to encourage their followers to abide by the scientific guidelines that would be prescribed by governments and international organizations. This is where the editorial holds the Delhi government and the Ministry of Home Affairs to be responsible for allowing the religious congregation to be held in the first place. This brings us back to the article on page number 3, which says that the Union Home Ministry has finally woken up to the Tabligh event and it is looking to take action against foreign participants who might have violated the visa norms that have been laid out by the Ministry of Home Affairs. See, the MHA, which is responsible for issuing visas and for laying down the visa guidelines, has made it clear that foreign travelers cannot misuse tourist visas for carrying out missionary activities in India. Any such activity would be treated as a violation of the visa norms and subsequently the visa would be cancelled and the individual would be deported back to their home country. The MHA has said that last year around 360 foreigners were deported from India for indulging in missionary activities despite being here on a tourist visa. This is where you need to understand that any foreigner who seeks to enter India for participating in an event or a conference, they need to apply for a separate visa with the MHA. Such foreigners, they need to approach the nearest Indian embassy or Indian consulate and file a separate application which explicitly mentions that they are seeking to participate in an event or a conference that is being hosted in India. In such cases, the MHA issues a visa to them, provided if they guarantee that they won't be involved in any religious or missionary activities. If they are found to be violating any of these guarantees, then their visas are cancelled and the MHA will be deporting them back to their home country. In the context of the Tabligh event, the MHA and the Cabinet Secretary have informed that around 2,100 foreigners have visited India for Tabligh programs and a number of them have been involved in missionary activities despite coming to India on a tourist visa. So the government of India has said that action would be taken against these foreigners who have violated the visa norms and subsequently they would be blacklisted. Then finally, the last concern is that few media outlets and few radical groups in India, they are trying to communalize the Tabligh event and they are trying to paint the entire community in bad light. Such attempts at communalization during this time of crisis is extremely dangerous and alarming. Because see, the pandemic will not differentiate human beings on the basis of their religion or caste or nationality. It will affect all of them equally hard, and hence this is the time for humanity to unite and come together. But instead, the irresponsible behavior of one group is being exploited by other communal groups in order to communally exploit the pandemic for political gains. That's the reason why the editorial says that we need to move beyond this blame game, and it is the responsibility of the governments to enforce scientific guidelines, and it is the responsibility of the public to uphold scientific temper even at the cost of keeping aside their personal religious views. Next, we have a column on page number 6 which analyzes the draft defense procurement procedure and the performance of the Make in India initiative in the defense sector. But we have already covered this analysis on the 21st of March, so kindly go back and watch this analysis. Now let's take up the next article. The Association of Indian Medical Device Industry is looking to produce around 50,000 ventilators in a couple of months by working with major automobile manufacturers such as Maruti Suzuki, Mahindra Mahindra, Tata Motors and Hyundai. Around the world, governments are tying up with automobile manufacturers to scale up the production of ventilators, which are very much needed to provide intensive care support to critical COVID-19 patients. In India, it has been estimated that by mid-May, India would require around 1.1 lakh to 2.2 lakh ventilators in order to support critical COVID-19 patients. Currently, there are hardly around 57,000 ventilators in India, and most of them are concentrated in urban cities. This shortage of ventilators could easily increase the fatality rate of COVID-19 in India. So in order to gear up for this threat, the government of India has roped in defense PSUs such as Bharat Electronics, BHEL, etc. And it is also working with private industry associations and automobile manufacturers in order to scale up the production of ventilators over the next 2 months. Next, in this article on page number 10, it has been reported that the DRDO has also been roped in by the Indian government in its fight against COVID-19. Various DRDO labs are involved in the production of a 5-layered mask known as N99, which makes use of nanotechnology. These masks are primarily meant for the armed forces and the healthcare workers who are at the front line of our fight against COVID-19. Plus, a few DRDO labs are trying to modify the existing ventilators so that one ventilator machine could be simultaneously used to support 4 patients. Then apart from this, DRDO labs are also producing thousands of liters of hand sanitizers, which would be made available to the armed forces and healthcare workers. Then the armed forces are establishing dedicated hospital beds in order to assist the civilian administration. They are also taking adequate precautions in order to prevent an outbreak within the armed forces by drawing lessons from other countries such as United States. Because in the United States, a number of military personnel have already been infected, including the aircraft carrier USS Roosevelt. Plus, the Indian Armed Forces have also been providing medical assistance and transporting equipment to friendly neighboring countries such as Nepal and Maldives. Now let's take up the practice questions. Which of the following statements are correct? The PM CARES Fund that was set up in response to the COVID-19 pandemic is a part of the SARS-CoV-19 Emergency Fund. The PM CARES Fund receives micro donations only from individuals and organizations within India. Both the statements are incorrect. Option D is the right answer. Just a few days back, we spoke about the PM CARES Fund. It has been set up as a public charitable trust and it will receive micro donations from individuals and as well as organizations, not just from within India, but from outside of India as well. So the PM CARES Fund can receive contributions from foreign donors, NRIs, foreign-based organizations, etc. And it is not a part of the SARS-CoV-19 Emergency Fund. This is an entirely different fund that has been established by the SARC leaders. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 1, India has welcomed foreign contributions as well to the PM CARES Fund. Now let's take up the next practice question. The term Nord Stream, which was recently in news, refers to a system of offshore natural gas pipelines from Russia to Europe across the Baltic Sea. Option A is the right answer. Please look at this map. Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 are natural gas pipelines that transport natural gas from Russia to Germany. These pipelines pass through the Baltic Sea and they make Russia a key provider of energy security to Western Europe. This question has been asked because we have a couple of articles on page number 7 and page number 10 which analyzes the current crisis in the global oil markets, which has been caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and by the geostrategic rivalry between Russia, Saudi Arabia and the United States. I have already explained this topic in detail on the 13th of March, so kindly go back and watch this analysis. Now let's take up the next practice question. Which institution or organization acts as the regulatory body for dealing with the safety issues in the field of civil aviation? The correct answer is option B, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation. See, the DGCA has been established as a statutory institution within the Ministry of Civil Aviation. It is responsible for regulating the safety issues in the civil aviation sector, and it is also responsible for investigating air accidents. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 10, the DGCA has allowed civilian passenger aircraft to carry cargo in the cabin, that is under the passenger seats and on the seats, in order to enable the smooth movement of freight goods and cargo within the country during this lockdown period. Since domestic and international flights have been cancelled during the lockdown period, civilian carriers such as Air India, Indigo, SpiceJet, etc., they are assisting the Indian Air Force to carry freight and cargo within the country in order to keep the supply chain running during this lockdown period. Now let's take up the next practice question. Which of the following statements are correct? Patriot is a surface-to-air missile system manufactured by the United States defense contractor Raytheon. India has procured it for induction in the army. Amongst the given statements, the second statement is incorrect. So option A is the right answer. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 11, the United States is planning to deploy the Patriot surface-to-air missile system in Iraq in order to protect its military bases in Iraq from any possible attacks from Iran. In response to this, Iran has warned the United States that the deployment of the Patriot missile system in Iraq could lead to a bigger disaster. Now let's take up the next practice question. The Codex Alimentarius Commission is an international food standards body established by the Food and Agriculture Organization and as well as the World Health Organization. So the correct answer is option D, both A and C. These two institutions established the CAC, and since 1961, it has been laying down international food standards that are being followed by the member countries. Even India is one of the members to the Codex Alimentarius Commission. The food safety standards that are laid out by the FSSAI are based on the guidelines of the CAC. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 11, international organizations such as the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, and the Food and Agriculture Organization, the world could face a massive food crisis in the coming months due to the suspension of agricultural activities around the world as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now let's take up a practice question from the 2016 prelims paper. The Parliament of India occupies the power to legislate on any item in the state list in the national interest if a resolution to that effect is passed by the Rajya Sabha by a majority of not less than 2/3 of its members present and voting. Option D is the right answer. This provision is contained in Article 249 of the Indian Constitution. Finally, let's take up a couple of mains practice questions. The first question, explain the new domicile rules for J&K that has been notified by the Union government. The second question, examine the visa restrictions of the Home Ministry for missionary activities in India. Kindly write an answer to these questions and post them in the comment section below. So this concludes our discussion for the day. Thanks for watching.